As we await the announcement of the Trump administration's much-hyped new economic sanctions against Iran, President Trump is waging a separate economic war with one of America's closest allies, Canada. Trade talks this weekend failed, leading to another round of steep tariffs by Trump, and this ahistorical analysis of Canada from Trump's transportation secretary.
It's a country that doesn't have a military. It has a country that has a single-payer healthcare system that's failing. They have record-high euthanasia rates. And so to think that they're going to go to war with Donald Trump and actually win that war with the U.S., I think it's foolish on their part.
Okay, Tim, Eddie, and Bharat are still with us. Yes, Tim, same. Canada does have a military. Canadian soldiers gave their lives fighting alongside Americans in Afghanistan. I'm not sure what any of what Duffy said has to do with anything, much less trade talks, or why the transportation secretary is chiming in. But to me, it just all adds to the cauldron of chaos.
Yeah, Duffy, the lies and the smears about Canada are offensive. Canadians died defending us after we were attacked in 9/11. You might remember Canada kind of housed Americans who were on flights in the air that had to be rediverted during 9/11, and they went to Canada for a couple of days. There were all these stories about how well that they were treated, while we were dealing with the aftermath of that. So it's extremely offensive and stupid. Sean Duffy probably just doesn't know anything because he doesn't read. But in addition to that, I think that there is some real lessons here for Democrats domestically from Mark Carney, because this is tough in Canada. I mean, there are real ramifications for the people of Canada here, by not agreeing to a bad deal. And a bad deal would be better economically for Canada than no deal. But Carney is looking at the long game. The Canadians seem to be behind him, and he's really standing up to Trump and just saying no. And I think that this is what a lot of people, domestically are looking for from the Schumer and Jeffries leadership in the Democratic Party. Carney's kind of a centrist technocrat guy, and I think he's providing a model for Democrats here on what people are looking for when it comes to standing up to this administration when they're, acting crazily and corrupt and irresponsible like they are in this trade war.
I mean, Bharat, it should be devastating to Americans that one of our closest allies is now imagining a way forward without us, both as it relates to national security and as it relates to trade and the economy. You had Ontario Premier Doug Ford saying that Canada should be ready to cut electricity and critical minerals to the U.S. Is that a realistic next step? Talk to me about the impact there.
Yeah, I think people would be surprised to learn that Canada is our second largest trading partner and that we do double the amount of trade with Canada that we do with China. So for all the focus on trade war with China, the fact is Canada can do quite a bit of damage to the United States economy if they go forward with retaliatory tariffs in response to what Trump is doing. And we're quite reliant on Canadian imports for everything from steel to energy. It's one of our largest sources of energy. And so they have the capacity to inflict quite a bit of economic harm. And that's why you see people like Senator Collins from Maine speaking out about it. Our northern border states are likely to be quite heavily affected by this in particular. You're going to see that effect in Michigan and Wisconsin and Montana and so on. And it just gets to the self-defeating nature of all of this, as people have talked about. Canada is one of our closest international economic partners, one of our closest allies in terms of foreign policy and the military. And now you have cabinet members going on TV and lobbing lame insults about the Canadian people and the Canadian government. To what end? Again, what are we trying to accomplish here? Canada is not taking advantage of us. We have a good, healthy system of trade with Canada. Nobody's taking advantage. And we both benefit from that. What goal are we trying to achieve here? When we see higher prices for everything from energy to wine to hockey sticks because of these actions, the American people are going to sit around and say, what are we supposed to be gaining from all of this? And why are we pissing off one of our biggest allies to accomplish all of this?
Right. And that has to do both with costs, Eddie, and just the view of America on the world stage. There was a devastating line from Mark Carney. I'm sure you heard it in describing these negotiations, where he said sometimes the signature from the U.S. is, quote, written in pencil. If the Canadians don't trust us, who then does?
Right. I think it's important for us to read Mark Carney's response, Canada's response to Trump's trade war, his assault, in light of his speech at Davos. Mm-hmm. Remember, that speech is going to come. Mm-hmm. That speech is going to go down in history. He basically described the United States as losing its standing, that we allowed this United States to act, even though it utilized its power for its own ends, it still afforded a level of stability to the global economy. But he implied at least, that we can no longer rely on the U.S. to act in that way any longer. And I think it's important for us to understand his response in relation to that description of the global economy that he laid out at Davos. And then we'll have an understanding of how he's moving and where we're headed, it seems to me.